So in the previous problems, we were finding the angle, right? We don't have to find the angle here though, because, or sorry, if I actually paid attention to what I was saying. Okay, in the other ones, we were finding the missing side, even though in this case, we don't really have to. We just want to find the angle. So we don't have to do sine, cosine, tangent every single time. What we're going to do is we want to figure out which one should we use, right? Given these two numbers, what do you think we should use? Sine, cosine, or tan? That's the question. So let's look at what we're given. Across from the right angle is my hypotenuse. Across from my angle is my opposite. I don't have the adjacent, right? I don't have that number. So which two trig ratios involve O and H, right? SOHCAHTOA. Which one involves O and H? It's right there. We're going to use sine. So sine of theta equals, what's that ratio? 1/2. So now the question is, how do we figure out that angle? Well, if I had, let's say I had the square root of x equals 3. What do you do to solve for x? You square both sides, right? Why? Because that's the inverse. The inverse of a square root is a square. So, and this is what gets a little confusing for students, because the inverse of sine is actually just called inverse sine. It's sine with a little -1. So what we're going to do is sine -1 on both sides. Okay. Sine -1 and sine, they're inverses. They cancel out. And so theta equals sine -1 of 1/2. Okay. So now we're going to use the calculator. If you look on your calculator, there's a sine button, right? Can you see the sine button? Okay, no, apparently not. Okay, so there's the sine button, and if you look right above it is sine -1, all right? That's the inverse, so it's blue. So we're going to hit second sine, and then the sine -1 comes up, and I'm just going to put in the fraction, 1/2. Enter. The answer's 30. Now, if you don't get 30, here's what you have to do. Check your mode, all right? So see the button right here? Okay, again, you can't see. All right, see the mode button right here? Hit it. See down here, degree is highlighted. If you have radians highlighted, we're going to learn what radians are later, your answer is going to be different. It's not necessarily wrong, but it's going to be, we're looking for degrees here. We're dealing with degrees. So make sure the degrees are highlighted. And then to get out of there, we have to hit quit. So second mode, and we quit back to the main screen. All right. So just hit second sine. We put our angle in. Done. Okay. So 30 degrees. All right. So the inverse of sine is sine -1 or arc sine. There's two different names. Cosine is cosine -1 or arc cosine. Tan -1, arc tan. I tend to say these because the problem is with this -1, remember f of x and f -1 of x, this meant inverse back when you learned about inverses. It's confusing because x to the -1 means something totally different. So this is incredibly different from this. All right? We're not talking about 1/. They're the same thing, but they mean two different things. You got to pay attention to the context. So a -1 in this case specifically means inverse, not 1/. All right? They're two different things. Okay? All right. So now let's try some problems. I'm going to zoom in. I feel like it's not big enough. Okay. How is that? It's better. All right. So we have, let's look at this first one. First thing we're going to do is we're going to label. All right. So what two sides do I have? Well, across from the right angle is my H. Do I have my O? Nope. All right. So I'm going to cross off my O. So what two sides do I have? I have A and H. Which trig ratio is that? That's your cosine. Okay, so I'm going to do cosine of theta equals what? Radical 2 over 2. Now, how do I solve for theta? I'm going to do the inverse on both sides, right? Cosine minus 1 of cosine theta equals cosine minus 1 of radical 2 over 2. Cosine minus 1 and cosine cancel out. These cancel out. And theta equals cosine minus 1 of radical 2 over 2. Now, you're probably asking, do I have to do this every time? No, I just really want you to understand that we're taking the inverse cosine of both sides. So now be really careful putting it in the calculator. I'm going to hit cosine. So second cosine to bring up the cosine minus 1. Now radical 2. Now be careful. You have to make sure the over 2 is outside the calculator. So it should look like this. All right? See how the radical ends? What did I do wrong? Oh, this calculator's in radians. That's why. I grabbed a different calculator. All right, so that's why you got to be careful with that. 45 degrees. Okay. Let me check this one real quick. Okay. So if we're using this calculator, I'm just going to show you the different version of it. So it depends on how your calculator is. So second cosine radical 2. Now, you have to close this parentheses, right? One of the issues in the class is you're not plugging in right. You have to close the